Part 1. The Girl God Carried Across Borders. The origins of abandonment, survival, and the first seeds of faith. I came into this world not as one thing, but many, born to a Romanian Orthodox father, a mother with Jewish blood who attended Episcopal-style churches, and a nation cracking under the weight of a dying dictatorship. My identity wasn't a single line. It was a mosaic. But before I even learned to walk, the world taught me something harsher than theology. Sometimes the people who love you still leave you behind. My parents fled communist Romania when I was small. They crossed borders, chased freedom, and because trauma makes people flawed, left me behind for a time. I grew up learning the shape of longing before I ever learned the alphabet. Eventually, I caught up with them in Hungary. It wasn't a joyful reunion with balloons and tears. It was survival, confusion, and a little girl trying to understand why the people who brought her into the world had vanished and reappeared like shadows. From Hungary, we were taken to a refugee camp in Vienna. 7 months of uncertainty. 7 months of hearing grown-up whispers about documents and approvals and where will we end up. 7 months without passports, without roots, without a sense of tomorrow. It was in that place, between identities, between languages, between homes, that I first felt the faint tug of God. Not in church, not in ritual, but in the quiet moments where a child learns that the only constant she has is an unseen presence holding her steady. My parents applied to the United States, Argentina, and Austria. All 3 said yes, but my parents chose Austria because it was close to home, close to Romania, close to everything familiar. I didn't know it then, but that decision would shape the entire landscape of my faith. Austria, where religion wasn't optional, and neither was survival. In Austrian schools, religion hour wasn't a suggestion, it was mandatory. Every child sat through Catholic instruction, whether they were Catholic or not, and so did I. I learned about confession, about contrition, about mercy and sin and absolution long before I learned anything about self-worth. I was absorbing a version of God through rituals that weren't mine, but they planted something, a curiosity, a reverence, a sense that I was seen, even in the cracks. Later, my parents discovered Pentecostalism. At first, it felt like heaven poured directly into my teenage chest. I prayed. I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt warmth, belonging, electricity. After years of instability, it felt like being held for the very first time. Even my grandfather, the hardened communist, became a Christian. Watching him soften, watching him change, watching him abandon decades of atheism. It felt like a miracle unfolding right in my family tree. But even miracles cast shadows. I didn't know it yet, but the next chapter of my faith would nearly break me. Part 2, the church that almost killed my faith. The impossible standards, the judgment, the trauma, and the unraveling. When we came to America, I expected the same warmth I felt in Austria, but instead I found something else, something colder. Faith here was branded, polished, performative. A stage, not a sanctuary. Everything became a rule. Wear a skirt. Cover your head. Don't wear makeup. Don't watch TV. Get married immediately. Submit, obey, be silent. Be a virgin. Prove your purity. Don't shine too brightly. Don't stand out. Have as many children as God gives you. Don't question. Don't think. Don't breathe wrong. And somehow, no matter what I did, I was never enough. Not for the churches. Not for the women whispering behind my back. Not for the men holding the pulpits hostage. Not for my in-laws who wanted a porcelain doll instead of a real woman. Not even for the man who looked at me and called me a Jezebel. A woman who would be eaten by dogs. When the truth is, I hadn't even sinned. I hadn't even lived. Imagine being a young woman, trying her best, and still being told she's spiritually rotten just for existing. Eventually, I snapped. My faith cracked. My worth cracked. And when I entered the federal government and started traveling across the U.S. gone into danger, into chaos, into humanity, I saw the world differently. I met Muslims who were kinder than any pastor I'd ever met. I met atheists more moral than Christians. I met LGBTQ+ people with more empathy than the holiest churchgoers I knew. And then tragedy struck. Something happened to me, twice in 2 months. That should never happen to anyone. It shattered me. It tore something out of me I didn't know how to rebuild. I was a virgin when I married. I had lived a sheltered life. I had no frame of reference for that level of evil. After that, I fell apart quietly. I numbed myself. I hid inside myself. My marriage hollowed out. My husband and I lived separate lives, sharing only a roof and a sense of duty to our children. Online, we smiled for pictures, for Facebook, for family, for the illusion that we were fine. But we weren't fine. We were two ghosts passing in a hallway, taking turns being strong so the kids never saw the cracks. And spiritually, I was gone. I wasn't angry at God. I just couldn't find him anymore. Part the thread, the return, the redemption, the resurrection. The moment of revelation, the reconciliation, and the understanding of Christ through pain. But God had never left, even when I walked into darkness, even when I tried to live like the world, even when I drowned myself in numbness just to make it through another day. There came a moment, my true come to Jesus moment, where the fog lifted, where the suffering finally made sense, where the threads connected. I realized why I had walked through so much, not because God abandoned me, but because he was shaping me, training me, refining me, giving me depth, empathy, wisdom, and eyes that see the unseen. He had already placed me on the best path toward him. I just didn't recognize it through the noise of pain. I returned to Christ. I returned to my marriage. And my husband, God bless him, returned to me. I learned grace, real grace, the kind that changes you, the kind that makes you incapable of judging another human being ever again. I learned forgiveness, not the church kind, the real kind that tears pride from your chest. I learned compassion, the kind that makes your heart break open for the homeless, the addicted, the wounded, because you finally understand. No one ends up there by choice. They end up there because life has been merciless. I understood free will, that God doesn't force our path. He invites us to grow through it. I understood pain as the doorway to spiritual maturity. And most of all, I understood Christ, not through sermons, not through rules, not through perfect church families or pretty Sunday dresses, but through suffering, through breaking, through resurrection. Christ didn't barricade himself inside temples. He walked among the broken. He touched the untouchable. He wept with the grieving. He confronted the hypocrites. He lived the most human experience possible. And so did I. So do I. This is my testimony. A child of many faiths. A refugee. A survivor. A woman who walked through hell and found heaven again. A wife restored. A mother strengthened. A Christian reborn, not by doctrine, but by fire. The God who followed me through every border, every trauma, every mistake, is the same God who carried me home.